Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's topic is a bit heavier than other shows. We are talking about death, dying, and grief. Not a very cheery topic, but it's a very important one because you know what? Unless you're immortal, you will die someday. I am going to be interviewing Lyne Limoges, the CEO of Orleans, Essex, VNA, and Hospice. But I'm also going to be weaving in my late wife's story. Penny died on July 29th of cancer, and she led a remarkable journey in life and while she was dying. And I think we have so much we can learn from that journey. And I also think we have a lot we can learn from Lyne. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'm happy to be here.
And you were Penny's classmate in high school.
I was. We won't need to date ourselves at this point, but yes, I went to school with Penny.
Yeah, you graduated, 25 years ago?
Yeah, 25 years ago. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, from Lake Region.
Near enough.
Close enough.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. You, in your position, you've actually had to maybe not be there, but some of your classmates transition.
We've had a number of our classmates transition over the last few years.
Of does that affect you?
It makes me mortal. It makes me realize that I will be there as well, and seeing what they're going through kind of brings perspective to my life as well.
Right. Yeah, 'cause it really is a humbling experience. You know, it's existential until it hits close to home, and I know although we didn't. We utilize mostly myself. I was so fortunate to have been there every step of the way because I work from home, and then I know I would pick your brain every step of the way. Then near the end, you guys came on in and provided your assistance, but. And also, I got to give a huge shout out for Penny's family and my kids. They were simply awesome. How everybody pulled together, and it ended up being, unless you've walked in my shoes, it was a wonderful experience. And maybe even people who walked in my shoes don't understand is. So you've dealt with this. What services do you guys provide?
So we provide home care. We also provide hospice, which is the end-of-life care that we provide. That enables the family to have services from nursing, therapies, whether it be physical therapy, occupational therapy, or speech therapy. Because even as a person is coming to their end of life, there is other opportunities to see what they need. We also provide aides and volunteers. We have a chaplain that works with us, as well as a social worker. And that's all part of the hospice team that we work with. We have a meeting every other week to discuss our hospice patients or potential hospice patients, and we look at their overall care. And we want to be there not to take over for the family, but to support the family and whatever their needs may be. We have families that need much more services, and then we have families such as yourself who is able to do the care and kind of call us in at the end. I mean, if we can go in earlier, then we can be there on an earlier basis. We also provide equipment in the home. So if someone needs a hospital bed or a commode, a bedside commode, and over the bed table, we also provide those. And those are of no cost to the patient. So all of the hospice benefit is there. And the sooner we can get into the home, sometimes that's better, depending on the family unit and where that's coming from.
You know, as a writer, I have written about hospice off and on, either directly or indirectly throughout the years, just because I work with some of the same clients you do, but I'm recording their stories and you're providing services. And I really didn't know what I felt about hospice or even end of life. It's because when it's abstract, you can't grasp it. But to make a long story short, when Penny was not diagnosed in your traditional way, she'd had a colon screening, and 3 years later, she knew she weren't feeling right on par, but she thought it was because we camped all summer and you eat food and you eat different stuff. And we were up in Maine when the rug was pulled out from underneath us, and she ended up in a hospital, Cary Medical, and we found out she had terminal cancer. And so right from then, Penny had this way of dealing with it. It was like I was waiting kind of for her to crash, because just because I thought to myself, she can't maintain this. But Penny had a strong faith. I don't mean this praise the Lord, hallelujah, trying to convince yourself of something, but she had a deep faith. But besides that, she was very practical. And she approached death and dying the way she approached everything else, a matter of a fact, and with humor. She was, even right then, before she even got out of the hospital, she was trying to fix me up with nurses, saying that, hey, this guy's going to need a woman in his life. And but when it comes to being hospice, is once we really grasped it, and once it was confirmed that this was going to be the end, this occurred the day after Thanksgiving in 2020. I asked Penny, I says, well, where do you want to die? This was still in the early stages, but we talked this whole thing through. She said, well, of course I want to die here. And, she wanted to die in the house where she'd raised her kids, where we'd renovated, and it was never even a question. And we talk about how strong Penny was and humorous. I was literally crushed. It was my world was rocked, as you know. From of course. I literally became an adult with Penny, and it took a long time. Like, I was the eternal optimist that no, this is a reason you're not going to you're going to be okay for at least a period of time.
Right.
Because one thing we chose not to do, we chose to have no timeline guesstimate. And with us, the reason we chose to do that is Penny chose to, instead of just crying about her plight, she chose to live. And her key words were, once she decided that she was not afraid of death, it truly freed her up to live. And we ended up going on the Living the Dream tour. When I say Living the Dream tour, it doesn't mean one trip. It was a series of trips around the country, and where we traveled, we had a wonderful time. The very last trip we went on, Penny was literally questioning whether she would come back, within the passenger compartment or within storage, because that's how bad she was. But she never, ever complained. We lived life. And then when she could no longer travel, we then went to our camper that we had parked. And then when she could no longer spend the night, we'd just go out during the day. And it was on a piece of land out near Lake Willoughby, owned by her brother, Benny Curtis, and her sister-in-law, Carol. And we lived, and then when we would go to the movies, we celebrated life.
Awesome. Every
step of the way. I did her home care. Her family helped. We had friends come in. And as I said, we had you. Now, is our story all that similar, or do you think Penny handled it?
She
Especially
handled
for
it amazing. She really did. I think that everyone has a different way of coming to grips with those news and what that's like and what they're going to choose to do for the rest of their lives, for however long that is. There are those people that aggressively want to treat the whole time, and then there are those that, I'm accepting of this and this is good and I want to live the best life that I can, which is what obviously Penny chose. But I think that, we try to support any and all different aspects of it, because we have those that are in their 50s that are passing. We've had people that are in their 20s. I mean, there are different levels of ages of people that pass, and then we have those that have just come to the end of their lives where I've lived 95 years and I'm okay to go, and so we've seen so many different avenues, and we're there to support the person. We're also there to support the families as well, because if we have someone who's passing and has, for example, we've had patients with Alzheimer's disease, and Alzheimer's disease can be terminal. It is a terminal illness. No one knows the time, but no one knows any time. But we try to support. That requires a lot of support of the family, because sometimes it's not really the patient that needs as much support as the family does, and that's why we try to be there, but for that person and for the family. But I think Penny had a unique perspective, and a very refreshing perspective, and I learned that through kind of living through Facebook, if you will, of seeing what was happening through Facebook and seeing how things are going. But she loved it.
Yeah, but the deal was, if you knew what was going on, but we there's a lot of people who were shocked because up until her passing,
they had no idea.
Nobody knew. True. But because you knew what was going on, you could kind of understand some of my posts which I did not address. And how did we come up? Some people ask us, well, how come? Because some people think we kept it a secret. Absolutely not. We approached death and dying the way it used to be done before social media. Is like, before social media, you didn't stand on the street corner and say, hey, I'm dying. Long before Penny had cancer, we used to watch, and no disrespect to people who choose to do this, but we did not want to turn this into social media drama. It was a part of life. It was an important part of life, and we didn't want to clutter our lives up with that. We wanted to embrace the people in our lives, our family, our friends, and Penny also did not want to be pitied. It was part of life. And that's why, so even before she was sick, we had already planned. Now, it was posted a day or two before she passed that somebody else posted, but the first time we ever made a public statement, when by this time most people knew who saw her when she was recognized at Brewfest this last year, just weeks or days before she passed, she was recognized for her work at cancer fundraising, at various fundraising, her 30 years in healthcare. When she got on the stage, if anybody had any doubts, they were done then. But that was the first time we ever made a public statement that she had cancer.
And that's okay, because it is private, and it should remain private, because you're right, it shouldn't be drama.
I'm okay if other people feel they need that they need that validation or they need that assistance. But we have a group of friends and family and community members who they were there for us, and that's who we really wanted in our lives. Now, I will tell you, and I'm sure you have seen this many times, even with patients, even with clients who are dying at 95, if they're dying, I'm sure and they're happy, you'll always have some people say, well, they're in denial. And no, I've interviewed people who were 100, my oldest was 104. They were ready to die, but they weren't depressed. It's like Penny. I actually had people suggests to me that Penny was in denial. Absolutely not. As she said, and I've said it before, once she realized that she was okay with dying, it freed her up to live. And that even helps you and if we
Absolutely
even being healthy, if we, because we're at the age now where we're checking off days on that.
And you wonder every time these little things that happen, like, oh, am I supposed to be feeling this way, or am I not? Is this unusual, or something happening?
So a good dose, a small dose of that is good. But if we start allowing ourselves fear of the end control us,
you won't be able to live.
Yeah, you won't. And Penny just thought it was the most refreshing. She wasn't happy about dying, but once she came to the point that she realized she was okay, it truly freed her up. But yeah, there were people who kind of questioned us, and we'd also hear rumblings from behind our backs that, well, I don't think she really understands. Penny understood. Penny fully understood, and before she passed, she wanted to wrap up life. She talked to me every step of the way. She talked to the kids. She talked about expectations. There wasn't even when she was in her final 2-3 days, she would explain to me. I said, "Why are your hands and feet so cold?" And then she'd explain that her core is pulling together, and this is part of dying. She was just like that, but she made. Not only did the way she choose to live her final year and a half make her life happier, but it really helped us, the kids and I, grandkids, move, find some kind of acceptance after she passed.
And I think it helped the people that knew what was happening with Penny as well. I think it also seeing what she was going through, like for example, what I was seeing is that it was refreshing to see what she was, how she was coping with it, how she was going through it, and how she was living, and she really was living.
Right.
So it was amazing.
Neighbors would say, I had one neighbor say, "You are the happiest group of people," because it didn't look like a scene that her days were coming to an end. We'd be all out playing cornhole out on the lawn, and she'd be sitting there between her two hero brothers.
Yep.
And she just had a great time. Yeah, we played so many games of cornhole. We had so many laughs, and she just really now back to hospice. So, do you see other people who take this opportunity to celebrate life?
We do. We've had a number of hospice patients who have taken. One gentleman comes to mind. He'd been wanting to go down and see his kids in Florida, and he was on hospice. And I mean, sometimes there's a misconception of hospice that you're dying, you're at the end of your life, and there's nothing left to do but die. And that's not true. I mean, hospice, this gentleman ended up going to Florida. He flew to Florida. And he was on his way. We sent his meds. He went down. He took some time to go see his son. He was down there for a couple of weeks. And then he came back home. But we were there if somebody needed to call, if the family had any questions. We were there if they needed support, if there was a medical emergency while he was gone. But there wasn't. And he went. And he didn't pass for months later. But it's part of being able to enjoy their life. And we have seen those people that's what they do. And it's great. They are living on their own terms and going out on their own terms, which is awesome.
And Penny loved her family. Even though our kids are scattered across the country, we are a very close family. And so she loved her family enough to give them wonderful memories. Because we had, almost 4 decades of memories. But when she flew to their houses, we visited, we experienced their world, their grandkids' world, and So while they still mourn the loss of their mother and grandmother, they overshadowing all the grief, though, are the wonderful memories. And to realize that their mother that was even more special than they ever met. Because I knew Penny grew up the baby, the only girl in a family of woodsmen. And I can't run a chainsaw without cutting my toes off. They're sharpshooter deer hunters. I can't hit a 4x8 sheet of plywood, or if I can, I think my gun's sighted in. But she was tough, and everything she did with precision. And she died with precision. She died with happiness. And do many, as I said, even though I've written about hospice, I've had hospice on here in the past. It wasn't until now that I couldn't fully grasp it. I couldn't really fully grasp it until I started talking to you just throughout the year and a half. And do many people avail themselves of your services?
I think that I think more people probably could be more involved if they. I think as I mentioned, there's a preconception that when you go on hospice, you die,
right?
And well, you're already dying,
right? So
the hospice is just there to support you. I think that we have had more people in recent past. But I think that's just sending out and getting the knowledge out there of what we do and what we can provide. We can be there as little or as much as you need.
Right.
And
right, exactly. And that's why I think one thing that came out of Penny, the way she handled it, and then me being a writer with the obituary explaining, this whole thing, I've had more people now come up to me and say, you know what? That got us to talking. Our age people.
Absolutely, which is good.
It got a lot more people talking. Well, what would we want? And, so that's why I invited you on, for a combination of telling Penny's story, but telling your story, because as I said, and I have my degree in psychology, and I have, but I still didn't grasp the whole thing until I was thrown into it. Now I would look back. For the most part, I couldn't even imagine why somebody, if they need hospice, wouldn't be on it. And it's like, for example, we weren't with you guys for very long, even though you were, because you could, right. You always opened yourself up to answer questions. But I remember one time in the final 2 days, Penny was lucid until the morning of, about the day before she passed. I just remember calling you guys up, and it wasn't anything major. She's like, can you send somebody up here just to reassure us that we're doing things right? Because, we didn't know, and then they came on up, and they reassured us we were.
Yep. And that's what we do. And that's what we do. We don't want to take over for the family. We want to support the family. And it's being able to take care of, if there's symptoms that come up from either, different illnesses that people pass from. If there's symptoms, it's the symptom management. It's being there for the family. It's being able to reassure the family. And to be honest, families really can't do it wrong, right? Because your loved one best. Right. You know them better than we do. But if it's a technical thing, and if it's a question about something that's happening, then we're there. We're there for you. I mean, we've got patients on hospice that we see daily. Right. We have patients on hospice that we see once a month, because that's all they need us for. But as the time progresses, then we're there if they need us more, as they need us more.
We were very blessed in so many ways. Like, I don't think our story is the typical in another way. When you're two people in your 50s, usually one of you is working outside the home. So, but me working from home, that was never an issue. I didn't have to worry for most days when about who was going to be here,
because you were there to take care
right.
of her if
but,
she needed
but
you.
She had family members. We had friends, but we also had friends within the medical community that were kind enough to us. We had neighbors. We had because I'm going to tell you, every once in a while we might get frustrated with our community, just out of little things. But I'll tell you, the community is like the restaurants that we frequent, they would send over just big meals.
We have a great community. We really do.
Yeah, and it's like I can finally 4 months later go out without because I did. Actually, we'll be talking about this part too about grief and everything. But when I go out now, I can finally go out without having the waitress or bartender say to me, "Oh no, you don't have a bill. Such and such paid for it," or somebody. For the first 3 months, almost, I'd say 75% of the time, I'd go to pay my tab,
and it was paid.
It was paid, and no, we really do, and sometimes that support comes in places you didn't expect. And I do have to give a shout out for the Halo Foundation. The Halo Foundation, which is made up of the Wright family and clan, they help out people, Orleans County residents with cancer,
Yep.
and they are wonderful. And as this show is as it's being recorded, I'm preparing to run my first Santa run.
I heard about that. I saw that in social media. Good for you.
But yep. So and I'm going to run in honor of Penny, and yeah. So who knows? Maybe I'll meet my maker there.
Who knows? No, I doubt it. Yeah. But that's awesome, and they are. The Halo Foundation does amazing things with the community. I'm familiar with some of the people that they've helped in the past, and they are amazing, and happy to go to their fundraisers for sure. Yeah. They have some great fundraisers that help out the community. We do, and I think that the community is there to help us. We get a lot of, our hospice gets a lot of donations, whether it's equipment or things that are donated after someone passes, and we pass those along to other people as well. We clean them up and we pass them along. And so it just shows how much of a community effort we have when someone needs us there, or when someone needs the community, they're there.
Yeah. It's interesting. Once you don't fully understand anything until you've walked in certain shoes. It's like what I tell people. I have a dear friend who was devastated when Penny died. My best man in my wedding, he was utterly devastated. And he comforted me, and within a week or two, I was comforting him about the loss of a son. And I have been there. I've helped him, but I've said to him, I know grief. I understand grief, but I do not understand your grief.
Exactly.
Because grief is all different, and the grief of losing a child is not the same grief of losing a spouse. But we still have a lot, and we still have a lot in common. And I think this is an interesting thing to say. I've heard other widows and widowers say on a social media site that I'm on, Penny's death in her dying has actually made me a better person.
I would agree with that.
I was a good person before, but I'm a better person now because she opened my eyes through her dying, the way she chose to live her final chapter, that, you know what, life is a wonderful thing. And I think I now look back and I think, because I didn't know, none of us know until we're there, that, you know what, I probably wasn't there for some other people when I should have been, but I didn't know. So but I'm trying not being so too harsh on myself.
No, don't be too harsh on yourself. And I think it's good because it does show people, how you're feeling is giving them the opportunity to think about it. And I think that that's a huge part of it, is to be able to take the time to think about it.
Well, this was the end of part one of this show. I want to thank you for coming on,
Thank you.
and we will be recording part two.
Awesome. I would like to share some news that we are having a group for the agency. At the agency, starting in January, we're having a support group, a bereavement support group for people who are going through the first year of first.
Yeah.
So when someone passes, when you lose a loved one, you have a year where you're going through the first birthdays and the first holidays and the first of many things. But the first year sometimes is a little bit harder. And if someone wants to come and join us, we're going to be doing the first Tuesday of the month at the agency on 46 Lakemont at Orleans, Essex, VNA. And it's going to be hosted by our medical social worker, Donna Lauren, and our chaplain, Mickey Richards. And they're going to be there. And stop by. It's going to be from 3 to 4:30 on the first Tuesdays of the month.
Okay. And my final words are, going on 5 months out, I still walk just in complete awe because of Penny. People say, because, I still grieve. I still get hit by tidal waves, but I still just am in awe. So, well, thank you for your work.
Thank
because
you.
I'm sure you, even though we didn't need you that much because of our own system, I know you provide some of the same you provide others with some of the same things we were able to provide, Penny. And
Absolutely. And we're there for people who just get diagnosed or barely diagnosed, and they want to go and live the end of their life, and they want to live it on their own terms and not have to worry about, once they've said, okay, I'm not going to be following any more treatments, I just want to live.
Okay.
Then that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice. Segment 2 will air next week.